The Zoran Dominion had ruled over countless stars for centuries. Their fleets were known everywhere, moving through galaxies like a storm no one could stop. They had conquered so many worlds that the names of those planets were forgotten, their people absorbed or erased. The Dominion was feared, respected, and seen as a force of nature. No one dared to oppose them, and those who tried were crushed so quickly that their resistance was remembered only as a warning to others. The commanders of the Dominion believed they were the strongest species in the universe. Their ships were enormous, built with weapons that could level cities from orbit. Their armies were disciplined and efficient, following orders without hesitation. To them, every new star system was only another jewel in their crown, another step in their endless expansion. They did not ask if they should conquer. They only asked when. When scouts reported a cluster of planets in the Orion arm of the Milky Way, the High Council of the Dominion dismissed it as an easy task. The report showed a young species living there, humans. They had only recently begun to expand beyond their homeworld. Their colonies were small compared to the empires the Dominion had swallowed before. Their technology was behind the Dominion's by hundreds of years. In the council chamber, commanders laughed. Some even called the mission a waste of resources, too simple to be worthy of their great fleets. Still, expansion was their way, and the order was given. A fleet was prepared and sent to human space. Dozens of ships, sleek and powerful, left the Dominion shipyards, their engines burning like stars. Among them were dreadnoughts that had once destroyed entire defense networks alone, cruisers with weapons that had silenced rebellions in days, and carriers that released waves of fighters like a flood. Confidence was high. The fleet expected victory within weeks, perhaps even days. As the Dominion ships entered human territory, they found nothing unusual at first. Scans showed scattered colonies and space stations, but no grand defenses, no fleets waiting to oppose them. The commanders began to believe this conquest would be one of their quickest. Some joked that they might not even need their full force to win. But then something unexpected appeared on their sensors. Drifting in the void between stars was a lone human warship. Compared to the Dominion's massive vessels, it was small, barely a fraction of the size of their dreadnoughts. Its design was old-fashioned, rougher than the elegant lines of Zoran engineering. Its weapons looked simple, even weak, at least by the Dominion standards. Many commanders assumed it was a patrol ship that had strayed too far from home. Yet there was something strange about it. The ship's energy signatures did not match the usual human pattern. Its shielding appeared thicker, reinforced with technology the Dominion had not seen before. The ship was quiet, almost calm, holding position as if it had been waiting. There was no panic, no attempt to flee, and no distress call sent to human colonies. Instead, the vessel broadcasted a single message. The transmission was brief and firm. "You have gone far enough." The words caused a ripple of amusement across the Dominion fleet. One ship speaking for an entire species? It seemed ridiculous. The commanders mocked the humans, calling them foolish for placing such blind faith in a single warship. They were certain the battle would be over in minutes. Still, a small unease began to creep into the thoughts of a few officers. This was not the reaction they expected. Most conquered species either begged for mercy or tried to hide their defenses until the last moment. But here was a lone ship facing an armada, daring to tell them to stop. It did not fit the pattern the Dominion had seen 100 times before. On the bridge of the Dominion flagship, Commander Veyrak studied the human vessel with narrowed eyes. "Strange," he muttered. "Their records say they are weak, but weakness does not speak like this." His second-in-command dismissed his concern with a wave. "It is only a trick. They hope to scare us with words because they have no weapons to back them." Despite his doubts, Veyrak gave the order for the fleet to approach. Fighters were launched, their wings spreading across space like flocks of metal birds. Cannons were charged, ready to fire at a moment's notice. The Dominion prepared to destroy the human ship in a single strike. On the other side, inside the Resolute Dawn, the crew remained calm. The warship had only a few hundred men and women aboard, but each of them was ready. They had trained for this moment, studied every detail of how the Dominion fought. Captain Elias Mercer stood at the center of the bridge, his eyes fixed on the enemy ships as they drew closer. He knew the odds were impossible, but retreat had never been an option. "Hold steady," Mercer said, his voice even. His crew nodded, hands moving across their consoles with practiced precision. They had no illusions about the danger they faced, yet their determination was unshakable. The Dominion had crushed countless worlds, but humanity was not like the others. They would not simply surrender and disappear. As the Dominion prepared to fire, the resolute Dawn adjusted its position. To the enemy, it seemed a minor move, almost meaningless. But to Mercer and his crew, it was the beginning of a plan, one built not on superior weapons, but on knowledge, courage, and the will to resist. In that quiet moment before the first shots were fired, the future of the conflict seemed uncertain. The Dominion still believed they would win easily. The humans believed they could stand their ground. And soon, the galaxy would learn that this lone warship was more than just metal and engines. It was a symbol of something the Dominion had never faced before, a people who refused to be conquered. The Zoran Dominion had always believed in overwhelming force. Against every enemy they faced, numbers and power had been enough to bring swift victory. Their commanders never worried about tactics because no one had ever forced them to adapt. When they saw the lone human warship standing in their path, they thought this would be no different. "Destroy it quickly," Commander Veyrak ordered. His voice echoed through the bridge of the Dominion flagship. Let this be an example to the humans of what happens when they dare to resist. Fighters launched in waves from the carriers, forming swarms of sleek, fast-moving craft. Each was armed with plasma cannons strong enough to tear apart a ship twice the size of the human vessel. Behind them, the Dominion cruisers powered up their main weapons. To them, the human ship was already defeated. Inside the resolute Dawn, Captain Elias Mercer watched the swarm approach on the tactical display. His crew worked calmly, their fingers moving across controls, their eyes scanning data. There was no panic, no shouting. They had trained for this moment again and again. "Enemy fighters closing distance," reported Lieutenant Harris. His tone was steady, though the threat was clear. "Estimated contact in 20 seconds, Mercer nodded. "Weapons online. Hold fire until they are in range. Make every shot count." The Dominion fighters came in fast, expecting the usual outcome, a quick kill. But when they entered range, the resolute Dawn fired with sharp precision. Its cannons, though older in design, struck with deadly accuracy. Each shot found a target, and the first wave of fighters exploded in brilliant flashes of light. On the Dominion flagship, the officers were stunned. "Impossible," one whispered. Their targeting system should not be this advanced. But it was not the weapons alone that made the difference. It was the crew. The humans had studied every battle the Dominion had fought. They knew the patterns of their fighter formations, the timing of their attacks, and the blind spots in their maneuvers. What looked like chance was actually careful prediction, turning the Dominion's arrogance into a weakness. Still, the swarm was vast, and soon the resolute Dawn was surrounded. Plasma fire lit up the void, striking against the human ship's shields. Sparks flew across the bridge as systems strained under the assault. But Mercer remained calm. "Redirect power to shields on the port side," he commanded. "Angle the ship 30 degrees and prepare counterfire." The resolute Dawn twisted through the chaos, moving in ways the Dominion had not expected. It was not stronger, but it was smarter. Each maneuver placed it in the best position to strike back. Each moment of survival was another blow to the enemy's confidence. Then came the cruisers. Larger ships moved into range, their cannons unleashing blasts of destructive energy. The resolute Dawn shook under the impact, its hull groaning as alarms filled the air. The crew worked quickly to contain the damage, sealing bulkheads and rerouting power. "Shields at 60%, Harris reported. Mercer's eyes narrowed. "Focus fire on the lead cruiser." "Disable, don't destroy." The crew obeyed, sending a volley of shots toward the Dominion vessel. To the enemy's surprise, the human fire targeted weak points, the joints in their armor, the exposed communication arrays, the vulnerable engines. Within minutes, the lead cruiser faltered, drifting helplessly in space. On the Dominion flagship, Veyrak slammed his fist against the console. How can this be? One ship cannot outmatch us. But it was happening. For the first time in centuries, the Dominion faced an enemy they could not crush with brute strength. Their strategies, once flawless, now failed against an opponent who adapted too quickly. Inside the resolute Dawn, the crew fought with determination. They knew their ship was weaker, but their unity made it stronger. Every officer trusted the others completely. Every soldier believed in the mission, and above them all, Mercer's calm leadership held them together. The battle dragged on. Hours passed, and still the human warship held. The Dominion's frustration grew. More fighters fell, more cruisers were damaged, and still the humans refused to break. At last, Veyrak ordered his dreadnoughts into action. These massive ships carried weapons so powerful they could split asteroids apart. As they moved forward, the space around them seemed to darken, their cannons glowing with deadly light. On the resolute Dawn, the crew braced themselves. They knew the dreadnoughts could destroy them in a single shot. The odds were impossible. Yet no one considered surrender. Mercer's voice rang out firm and steady. "This is where they believe we fall. This is where we prove them wrong. Prepare evasive maneuvers, target their weapon ports, and remember, every second we stand is another second they learn to fear us." The human ship surged forward, weaving between blasts of energy that could have ended them instantly. Each time the dreadnoughts prepared to fire, the resolute Dawn struck first, hitting their targeting systems, forcing them to recalibrate. The humans were not winning by strength, but by refusing to give the enemy the fight they expected. On the Dominion ships, doubt spread like a shadow. Their crews had never seen such resistance. They had never been forced to question their own power. And in that doubt, the seeds of fear were planted. By the end of the clash, the resolute Dawn was scarred and battered. Fires burned in some sections and the shields flickered dangerously, yet it still stood. Around it floated the wreckage of Dominion fighters and crippled cruisers. For the first time in the history of the Dominion, a single enemy ship had stopped their advance. The battle in the Orion Arm had already lasted longer than any Dominion commander thought possible. A single human warship, the resolute Dawn, had held its ground against waves of fighters, powerful cruisers, and even the mighty dreadnoughts. Though scarred and damaged, the ship still stood, a defiant spark of light in the dark void. For the Dominion, it was an insult unlike any other. They had conquered entire civilizations in less time, yet here was one vessel refusing to break. On the bridge of the Dominion flagship, Commander Veyrak stared at the display with fury in his eyes. Around him, officers reported losses. Fighters destroyed, cruisers disabled, morale falling. "None of it made sense. This cannot continue," Veyrak growled. "Send for reinforcements. We will drown them in numbers until they are dust." Within hours, hyperspace portals lit up, and more Dominion ships entered the sector. Dozens became hundreds, their engines glowing as the reinforcements spread into formation. The Dominion had gathered a force large enough to crush an empire. Against one human ship it seemed more than enough, but the humans were ready. On the bridge of the resolute Dawn, Captain Elias Mercer stood at his post. His uniform was torn, his face marked with the strain of battle, but his eyes were steady. Around him, his crew moved with the same quiet determination that had carried them through the long fight. They knew more enemies were coming, yet no one wavered. Lieutenant Harris reported in a calm tone, though his screen showed the impossible. "Multiple reinforcements detected, count as over 200 ships, sir." A murmur ran through the bridge, but Mercer's voice silenced it. "We have stood against them this long. We will stand again. Ready the crew? This is not the end." The Dominion fleet advanced, confident this time that nothing could save the humans. But just as they prepared their attack, hyperspace portals opened once more. This time behind the resolute Dawn, human reinforcements had arrived. At first glance, they were few. A small fleet of warships, carriers, and escorts, nothing compared to the Dominion armada. But their arrival lit a fire of hope in the hearts of the resolute Dawn's crew. They were no longer alone. On the Dominion flagship, Veyrak laughed coldly. "So this is the best they can bring? A handful of ships against our thousands? Foolish to the very end." But as the battle began again, Veyrak realized his mistake. The human fleet moved with perfect unity. Each ship supported the others, covering weaknesses, protecting damaged vessels, and striking at the exact moments when the Dominion lines faltered. They fought not as scattered individuals, but as one living force. The resolute Dawn, though battered, led the charge. Its crew pushed past exhaustion, fighting with the courage of those who refused to give in. They targeted weak points in the Dominion's massive formation, breaking apart groups of ships and forcing the armada into disarray. For every human ship that fell, the rest fought harder. For every Dominion victory, a sudden counterattack stole it away. The battle was no longer about numbers or weapons. It was about willpower. On planets across the galaxy, hidden eyes watched. Other species, long oppressed by the Dominion, intercepted the transmissions of the battle. They saw humanity's defiance, their refusal to surrender, and something began to stir within them. Hope. For the first time, the galaxy realized the Dominion was not invincible. Hours passed, and the Dominion's confidence turned to doubt. Ships were lost, dreadnoughts damaged, fighters scattered. The human fleet was small, but it would not break. And at the center of it all was the resolute Dawn, the ship that had faced the Dominion alone and lived to fight again. Commander Veyrak's voice grew sharp with desperation.
Why do they not fall?
They are weaker. Their weapons are less advanced. Why do they still fight? No one answered. The truth was clear, though none dared to say it aloud. The humans were stronger where it mattered most. On the resolute Dawn, Captain Mercer gave his crew one final order. Target the Dominion flagship. If we can break their command, we break their will. The human fleet shifted, focusing their fire on the massive vessel at the heart of the enemy formation. Blasts of energy lit up the darkness, striking again and again at the Dominion flagship's shields. Veyrak shouted commands, his officers scrambling to respond. But for the first time in his life, he felt fear. The humans were not just fighting with weapons. They were fighting with something the Dominion had forgotten long ago, the belief that freedom was worth any sacrifice. When the flagship finally shuddered under the human assault, its shields collapsing, silence fell across the Dominion fleet. For centuries they had never retreated. But now, faced with a foe that would not surrender, the order was given. Withdraw, Veyrak whispered, the word tasting like poison. Fall back. And so the Dominion retreated. Their ships turned and vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of their once proud armada. For the first time in their long history, the Dominion had been forced to abandon a conquest. On the bridge of the resolute Dawn, cheers erupted. Exhausted crew members embraced, their relief as great as their pride. They had survived the impossible. Mercer stood quietly, watching the stars where the Dominion had fled. His face was tired, but his voice was strong. This was not just our victory, he said. This was a message to the galaxy. The Dominion can be stopped, and humanity will never bow. News of the battle spread quickly. Across worlds crushed under Dominion rule, whispers became shouts. If humans could resist, so could others. Rebellion sparked like fire across the stars. The legend of the resolute Dawn and its captain grew, told and retold as a story of defiance and courage. The Dominion had learned a bitter truth. Conquering humans would not be easy. They were not the weakest species. They were the most dangerous kind, one that fought not because they believed they would win, but because they refused to surrender. And as the galaxy watched, one thought echoed in every corner. Humanity had arrived and nothing would ever be the same again.